Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something going on in Philippine politics that's been really turning some heads.
Yeah, definitely a lot of people talking about this one.
So you remember back in 2022, there was that Uniteam alliance,
Right.
the one that brought President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte to power.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
It was supposed to be, this united front,
Right.
stability and progress.
Mm-hmm.
But things have been a little dramatic lately.
Definitely a lot of tension there.
So maybe you can kind of fill us in on what's been going on.
Yeah, so basically, it started with these allegations of misused funds within the vice president's office.
Okay.
And her chief of staff lawyer, Zuleika Lopez, was found in contempt during this House panel investigation.
Right.
And, the House of Representatives has some power in these situations,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they initially ordered Lopez detained at their facility,
Mm-hmm.
but then they decided to transfer her over to the Correctional Institution for Women.
Okay, so that's where things start to get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
So Duterte, who, is known for her loyalty, she didn't take this lightly.
Not at all.
She went to the Bataseng Pambansa complex, which is where the House of Representatives is located,
Right.
to support Lopez.
Yeah.
Even spent the night there,
Hmm.
like directly defying the House order.
It's a pretty bold move, yeah.
Especially for someone in her position, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks to how committed she is to her staff, but it's also kind of a sign of the escalating tensions between her and the Marcos administration.
Right.
Like, it's one thing to disagree on policy, but this is like a whole other level.
Yeah. So then there was that press conference.
Oh, yeah.
With Duterte and Lopez.
That was something,
They made some pretty shocking statements,
to say the least.
including like a direct threat against President Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez.
Yeah, that was pretty intense.
Yeah. She actually said, and I'm quoting here, "May kinausap na ho na tao. Sinabi ko sa kanya, kapag pinatay ako, patayin mo si BBM, si Liza Araneta, at si Martin Romualdez. No joke, no joke. Nagbilan na ako."
Which translates to, I already talked to a person, I told a person, if they kill me, kill Bongbong Marcos, Liza Araneta, and Martin Romualdez. No joke, no joke. I've left instructions.
Like, that's a chilling statement.
Mhm.
And the palace isn't taking it lightly either.
No, they're calling it an active threat.
Yeah.
They immediately referred the matter to the Presidential Security Command.
Right.
And they even released a statement saying, any threat to the life of the president must always be taken seriously. More so that this threat has been publicly revealed in clear and certain terms.
So you have the vice president publicly threatening the president.
Yeah, it's not something you see every day.
Like, what could have pushed her to this point?
Well, there's another layer to this whole thing that we need to consider.
Okay.
Duterte's also accused First Lady Liza Marcos of orchestrating like this whole smear campaign against her. Yeah, alleging that Liza was behind cash-filled envelopes that were being distributed within the Department of Education.
So she's saying there's like a whole conspiracy against her.
Basically, yeah.
But why would she go public with something like that? Is this like a genuine belief, or is there something else going on here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a way to kind of deflect attention from the allegations of misuse of funds in her own office, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, by pointing the finger at someone else, she shifts the narrative.
Yeah, classic political strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also possible she really believes there's a plot against her, you know?
Mhm.
The question is, why choose this particular moment and this particular method to fight back?
It just seems so risky.
It is. Yeah, it's a high-stakes gamble for sure.
Yeah.
By making such a public and dramatic accusation, she's essentially forcing a confrontation.
Right.
And that could backfire spectacularly.
Especially with the response from lawmakers.
Oh, yeah.
Some are actually calling for a psychological evaluation of the vice president.
Yeah, that's definitely not something you hear every day.
No, not at all.
It's a serious development.
Yeah.
It shows just how much her actions have shaken the political establishment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, they're questioning her fitness for office.
Wow. So this is just adding another layer of complexity to this already very tangled web.
Yeah, it's a mess.
You got threats, accusations, and now questions about the vice president's mental state.
Right?
And this story is unfolding so rapidly.
Yeah. And the consequences could be huge.
Yeah, this is definitely one to keep an eye on.
For sure.
All right, well, we'll be right back after the break to dig a little deeper into this whole situation.
Sounds good. This whole thing's really highlighted some deep-seated issues in Philippine politics, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we're seeing these clashing personalities,
Right.
a real struggle for power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most importantly, like a crisis of trust.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the drama of it all, the threats, the accusations.
Exactly.
But we have to remember, this all started with a pretty serious claim of corruption.
Absolutely. That's where it all began, right?
Right, and it raises some big questions.
For sure.
Like, how are funds being managed within the vice president's office?
Uh-huh.
What oversight is in place?
Right. Are there any checks and balances?
These are all things that need answers.
Regardless of the political gamesmanship.
Exactly. And Duterte has been so adamant in defending her chief of staff, Zuleika Lopez.
Right. She's basically saying Lopez is being targeted, that it's all part of this, like, big scheme to discredit her.
Yeah, so is that believable?
Whoa. I mean, claiming you're the victim of a conspiracy, that's a pretty common defense tactic.
Yeah.
But whether there's any truth to it or not, the fact that these questions are even being asked, that says something.
Right. It makes you wonder if this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what else is going on that we don't know about?
That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
Philippine politics has a long history of these kinds of scandals.
Right.
And this one has the potential to be huge. The investigation is ongoing, so we'll have to see what they find.
Right.
But just the fact that it's happening is a blow to the government's credibility.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just about credibility either.
Right.
Corruption has real consequences for people.
Absolutely. It affects their everyday lives.
Yeah, it diverts resources from essential services, undermines trust in institutions,
Right.
and it creates this environment where those in power can act without accountability.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's why this whole thing is so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about the political drama.
No, this is about the future of the Philippines.
Exactly.
Like, if corruption is allowed to flourish, it erodes the very foundations of democracy.
Right.
And that has a devastating impact on ordinary citizens.
So what does this mean for the average Filipino?
Well, I think the biggest concern right now is instability.
Okay.
Duterte's threats, whether they're serious or not, they've created this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty.
Right. And that uncertainty can affect everything.
Oh, yeah.
The economy, social programs,
Right. Investors get nervous. Businesses hold back.
Yeah.
And people start to worry about their livelihoods.
So it's like this whole situation is a test for Philippine democracy.
In a way.
Can the system withstand this kind of pressure? Can it deliver justice and accountability?
Those are the big questions.
Yeah, and we've seen how Duterte's responded to this. But what about President Marcos Jr.? How's he handling this? That's the big question, right? How is he going to respond to this direct challenge from his own vice president?
Yeah, it's got to be a tough spot for him. I
Yeah.
mean, he's going to look strong and decisive, but he also can't, like, escalate things.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah. And it's even more complicated when you think about all the historical baggage,
But absolutely.
both of their families.
Right. Philippine politics has always been kind of complicated.
To say the least.
Yeah, a lot of strong personalities, shifting alliances.
And unfortunately, violence, too.
Yeah, and both Duterte and Marcos, they come from families that are really intertwined with all that.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, on the one hand, you've got Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of the late dictator, Ferdinand Marcos Sr.
Right, who ruled for over 2 decades.
And that period was, marked by human rights abuses and widespread corruption.
Yeah, it left a legacy that's still being felt today.
And then you've got Sara Duterte,
Right.
daughter of Rodrigo Duterte.
Another controversial figure.
Yeah, known for that brutal war on drugs,
So, yeah, both families have a pretty complicated past.
to put it mildly.
Yeah. And that history, it influences how people see them and their actions.
Right.
Adds another layer of tension to this whole thing.
So how does all this historical context help us understand what's happening now?
Well, it suggests that this clash between Duterte and Marcos is about more than just disagreeing on policy.
Yeah.
Or, personal animosity.
Right.
It's about power. 2 powerful families fighting for influence and control.
And it's all happening against a backdrop of historical grievances, political maneuvering.
And a public that's just fed up with the political elite.
Yeah, it's a dangerous mix.
It is. So where do we go from here?
Right. Like, what are some possible outcomes?
Well, maybe Duterte and Marcos find a way to, like, patch things up,
Okay.
at least publicly,
Yeah.
for the sake of stability. Maybe they strike some kind of deal behind the scenes.
Right.
Something that lets them both save face and move on.
But is that realistic, though?
I mean,
Given everything that's happened.
it's hard to say.
Yeah, it seems like the damage is already done.
Right, it might be too late for that.
So what else could happen?
Well, this conflict could lead to a more permanent split in the ruling coalition.
Okay.
We could see a whole political realignment.
Right.
New alliances, old ones dissolving.
Could that trigger early elections?
It's possible.
Wow.
And of course, there's always the risk that things could get out of hand, leading to violence or even a constitutional crisis.
So what would that mean for the average Filipino?
It's hard to predict exactly, but any kind of instability is going to have ripple effects.
Yeah.
The economy, social programs, security.
Right, so the stakes are incredibly high.
For everyone, yeah, not just the politicians.
So what can people do?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed.
Yeah.
Engage in constructive dialogue and hold their leaders accountable.
Because ultimately the future of the Philippines is in the hands of its citizens.
Right. It's up to them to decide what kind of country they want.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack here.
A lot to unpack and a lot to think about.
For sure.
We've uncovered some concerning trends, explored the history, and looked at the potential consequences of all this.
And as we've seen, the situation is still developing.
Right.
But one thing's for certain, the choices made in the next few days and weeks, they're going to have a huge impact on the future of the Philippines.
So to our listeners, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
Yeah, the Philippines has faced challenges before.
And come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly.
So until next time, take care everyone in the